about 1.5 billion travelers, and of course, COVID affected the industry, so there was a sharp drop. But you can see that by 2022, the sector had already started peaking. And the anticipation is that by 2024 end, the sector will have actually surpassed the original level that we were on before COVID. If you look at some of the statistics that are provided by World Tourism Organization, you can see that actually 2019, the sector contributed about 10.4% of the GDP, which dropped definitely. And by 2023, we had gone back to 9.1, and we expect this to go to 10.6% of the GDP, of course, which is very interesting as far as we are concerned. If you look at Uganda particularly, yes, this is how we are performing. 2018, we are at about 1.5 million tourists. 2019, COVID affected us, but you can see we are going back, and we expect that by the end of 2024, the sector should have actually improved. So that means the sector indeed provides opportunities for growth. Now, in terms of where we get most of the visitors, if you look at the whole globe, of course, we have got most of our visitors coming from Africa, followed by Europe and the rest of the world. Now, of course, there is an opportunity because currently we have got almost 1.5 people who provide the market that we can easily tap into. And remember, in Africa, in Uganda, we're getting only 1.5. What does that one mean? If we are getting most of our visitors from Africa, it means we still have a very big market out there that if we put emphasis, if we invested in marketing, if we invested in making sure that private sector and the agencies responsible for marketing tourism in Uganda reach those particular markets, we can easily grow tourism in the country. Actually, to be precise, that's how we are performing. If you look at that graph, Kenya, DR Congo, and of course, statistically, some of these are even refugees, by the way, because in statistics, they capture them. So you can see that we are looking at the sector contributing seriously, even when we have very small numbers we get from high-value source markets. Now, what about if we put in some energy in terms of marketing? We can do a lot. I tried to make a broader, typological grouping of attractions, or what determines the attractiveness of a destination, so that we can have a picture. And then we see where we, as far as Uganda is concerned. So we have got the natural attractions, which are very many, and in Uganda we have, of course, very many. We have got the human-made, but not originally designed, primarily to attract visitors. Those are very many. Then we have got human-made and purpose-built for tourists. We have got very many, and special events. So if you look at Uganda, basically we are looking at wildlife, which is steering what we are talking about right now. So events talk about mice, we are not yet there, and I think this is where we need to put a lot of emphasis as well. Culture, we are not yet there. Even in natural attractions, we are actually focusing more on wildlife, but if you look at most of the water bodies, we are not doing anything about all these resources. So we still have a lot that we can invest in to trigger the impact as far as the sector is concerned. If you look at the value of River Nile in Egypt, we are not even a quarter way of what we are benefiting as a country. We have got some of the vibrant towns nearby in East Africa alone, but we cannot actually bring those people to spend a weekend across. So what about if we have got Lake Victoria just near, that you have got people from Kisumu, people from Mwanza spending a weekend in Jinja or in Entebbe? There is a lot that we can actually do. And still in the sector where we are, or in the national parks, the wildlife where we are emphasizing, we are not actually tapping the optimal utilization of these resources. And I will just very quickly show you. Can we put back, please? Yes. Actually, if you look at the revenues we get from national parks, over 50% of the revenue we get is from wind. So most of the other protected areas are actually coast centers. If you look at most of our forest reserves, we are not doing a lot. Yet most of them have got chimpanzees. If you look at Karinjhu and so many others, Bugoma and so many others. So even in the national parks, if we invested, I'll just pick one example of Rwenzori, which is compared with Kilimanjaro. While Kilimanjaro is number 2 in terms of revenue generation and job creation in Tanzania, for us, Rwenzori is only generating 1% of revenues in Uganda. Yet, it is actually more challenging and more resourceful as far as tourism is concerned. So there is a lot that we need to exploit if we need to generate more jobs and more income as far as tourism is concerned. In terms of the distribution of the tourists we have, we shall see that actually most of the visitors we get here for business and professional activities, but those who come for a holiday are still the number is still very small. And what does that mean? It means that actually the high value segment of visitors is still small, and that means we need to put more emphasis when it comes to marketing and investing resources, because there we can easily get high return on investment if we attracted more and expanded that segment a little bit further. In terms of purpose of travel and lengths of stay, you can see that actually on average, a visitor in Uganda stays about 7.5 to 8 days as of 2022. And what does this mean? It means that if we put all the investment, we can easily, try to push the number of days to about 10 or more, and that means more spending, more opportunities created as far as tourism is concerned. Now, domestic tourism is as well doing a very good job as far as the country is concerned. By 2022, if you look at tourism satellite accounts, we had almost 2.7 million visitors, domestic visitors. But of course, we are saying that this is very important for creating economic vibrance in the country, although they do not, because this is not an export, but at the same time, it helps the sector to keep, functioning because of the travel that these people make within the country. If you look at where they spend, domestic visitors, some of them use road, some of them use air, food, accommodation, shopping. So that means they keep economic vibrance as far as Uganda's economy is concerned. Now, if I move very fast to the national objectives as far as tourism is concerned, of course, promote domestic and inbound tourism, increase the stock and quality of tourism infrastructure, and then developing and conserving the tourism products, as well as developing a pool of skilled manpower. We have got to really look at very serious interventions that we have got to focus on as a country, and I will move fast in the interest of time to look at these interventions because I think it is very key for me. So we have got the first order priorities. And here, we very well know that tourism in Uganda is private sector driven, much as it is government-led. So from COVID, of course, there has been a number of interventions that have been put in place to help private sector, but we still think there's a need for fiscal and monetary measures which would catalyze private sector growth, because with private sector, we know that definitely more opportunities will come up if private sector becomes strong in the country. So special support schemes for private sector, where we need to consider a number of tax exemptions, especially to those who set up, hotels. Some of them go in hard-to-reach areas, so these exemptions will help them to go in some of the areas where services are needed, but the investment is not yet there. Then, of course, we need to harmonize the taxes in the country. We need to establish and operationalize tourism investment fund. This is happening elsewhere in Kenya. The cost of finance in Uganda is very high, And if we really want to make deliberate moves to promote private sector in the country, especially as far as tourism is concerned, a tourism fund would work so that we trigger more private sector actors in the country, and then more investment, of course, more opportunities as far as tourism is concerned. And then the issue of brand image and awareness about Destination Uganda, very important, where we need to invest in building a positive and competitive image of the destination. And here, very, very important that we need to scale up on online market presence, online visibility, meaning investment in ICT, somebody talked about it, in key source markets, destination awareness, particularly focusing on domestic, regional, as well as international source markets. And then very, very important, subsidize private sector to market Destination Uganda, national, regional, internationally. And of course, this means that we can create something like a matching grant. I know in agriculture there's something of that nature, that private sector can probably meet 40%, and they can get some support, about 60%, to be able to go and market the country. And they can actually do that very well. There is a need to establish a quality assurance framework to improve standards. Because the moment standards are not good, automatically, that even those we have been able to attract in the country, we lose them. Most of the people who get very good services will go and talk. So that is the free marketing that we get. So we need to invest in quality assurance, and that would mean that we need to strengthen the UTB quality assurance unit, support it, and of course also create incentives that would make private sector form these associations, and associations become stronger so that they can actually do self-regulation. Importantly, wildlife management, because this is our cash cow as far as tourism is concerned. So we need to intensify anti-poaching approaches in and outside protected areas, remove invasives in protected areas. We have been able to specify a number of them, and address human-wildlife conflicts around protected areas, including barriers, electric fences, and others. Second order priorities has to do with, increase the stock and quality of tourism infrastructure. We have been talking about tourism roads, so that we can ease movement in these tourism destinations. So here, one of the key priorities we're talking about, wind roads, in the southern sector especially. Why are we talking about the wind? It is one of the high-value resources we have in the country. But sometimes they are blocked completely. The roads are blocked completely, and tourists cannot access some areas on time. And then there is a need, of course, to improve and maintain access roads in Lake Mburo, Queen Elizabeth, Piani Upe, and even the Bigobia Mjini, that we think should be something that is upcoming as far as cultural tourism is concerned. Support product development and diversification is very important, so we need to invest in it. And here, of course, there is a need to develop prioritized cultural and heritage sites. Bigo is one of them, but there are a number of others. And then construct improved equator monuments. There is already a study that has been conducted about the equator. Something unique about equator is equator crosses only 6 countries in the world. So it becomes very unique that we can actually promote it. So if we invest in these monuments, we can easily trigger private sector investment around these monuments. In some countries, even you can construct what we call the equator road, which we can actually do a PP arrangement that somebody creates an equator road and people pay to drive in this equator road, and it becomes an economic activity. So these are things we need to think about so that we can actually have wildlife, but in addition to wildlife, we utilize these resources that we have as far as our country is concerned. Upgrading Piani Upe Wildlife Reserve into a national park, and of course putting the necessary infrastructure, because Pian right now has got high density of wildlife in the area, and that means we would have a lot of traffic going in the east compared to right now a big number going to the west. Lastly, we need to develop a pool of skilled personnel along the tourism value chain. And of course here we need to fast track the completion of Uganda Hotel and Tourism Training Institute. I know it has been constructed, but there's a lot. It has not been completed, and this will be the Utari of Uganda so that we can be able to train people. And of course, provide the tailor-made training for all the actors across the entire tourism value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for that enriching presentation. I think we can all agree that tourism creates other economic activities, and our entrepreneurs can actually manifest their talents as well as their skills through tourism. And we can be able to create more employment opportunities that can drive economic transformation. As a takeaway from Professor's presentation, there are some low-hanging fruits that can be harnessed. For instance, providing an investment fund which can easily be accessed through the Ministry of Finance, support schemes for tourism, branding and awareness, not forgetting ICT's contribution to the branding and awareness, creating Uganda as a destination. We know that Rwanda does not have as many tourist attractions as Uganda does, but it scores much better than we do because they do a lot of branding and awareness for the attractions they do have in their country. Also, product diversification and development, and of course, echoing what Mr. Woma talked about earlier, which is skilling. Skilling is very important. And on that note, I would like to invite the discussant for these two presentations, Ms. Pearl Kakoza, and I will not attempt to pronounce the other name. I tried to Google it, but I could not get the right pronunciation. You're welcome, Ms. Pearl.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pearl Horo Kakoza. I'll address in my three capacities. I wear three hats today. I am in the private sector. I'm Managing Director, Uganda Travel Bureau. We've been in business for the past 52 years. I am also the chairperson of the Uganda Association of Travel Agents. And my most recent appointment, of course, is the board chair of Uganda Tourism Board, to which I'm very, very honored to serve. Thank you very much, the two discussants. You've given us a good framework so we can talk about our priorities. Professor, you did mention domestic tourism is not really a priority in Uganda. I'd like to say that one thing that has been missing in all these presentations is the fact that Uganda does have a national carrier, and we've not even tapped into the strength of what a national carrier can do for a country. During COVID, of course, we saw the airspace was closed, but then in 2021, tourism, air travel was considered one of the important important sectors, and we were given leave to continue operating. So domestic flights, I'm just sad that PSTT, oh, here he comes. Domestic flights to support domestic tourism is important as a country. Another thing that is limiting, of course, we want to increase these tourism numbers tenfold. We have a visa regime which seemed to have fallen on the global scale, even though we've become digitized. But the truth is, it is more difficult to come and visit Uganda as a tourist these days if you're not from, for example, the first world countries. I would advocate for us to make the visa regime easier for the countries where our national carrier, Uganda Airlines, flies into. We have India, Nigeria, we're coming on board is Zambia, and of course, we have UAE. Tourism, yes, is expected to rebound to this year, 2024, to 2019 levels. And even IATA, the International Air Transport Association, has agreed or have put figures forward that it shall happen. Kenya and Tanzania recovered last year, and Uganda is set to recover by the end of 2024. However, I do want to just point out that the numbers are fewer visitors than, or the air traffic, because the yield, aka the cost of the ticket, the cost of travel, has increased from between 5 to 10%. That's the price of an air ticket globally that has gone up. So we have to, of course, balance these two things. Yesterday, we were introduced, of course, to taxes. Are they very friendly towards the growth of our economy in Uganda? Let me point out hospitality, specifically the hotels. Hotels are mandated to pay 27 different taxes and licenses today for them to operate within the framework. We may discount the statutory ones, which is PAYE and NSSF. Yes, it is a serious matter. So what we really need is harmonization of these taxes, Mr. PSST, please. It's very important. Alternative sources of revenue, access to finance. We have on paper the tourism development tax, which the professor did talk about. That could be seen as, or that could be used as a challenge to help the growth of tourism. I did write a paper about 4 years ago about what we call the tourism development levy. Of course, you may say you've just talked about harmonizing the taxes in the hotel sector, and then you talk about tourism levy as well. Every country, almost every country in the world does charge a tourism development levy. Every country but Uganda. So I think it is important that this is operationalized so that part of that tourism levy then goes back to the private sector through Post Bank, who is a government bank, so that we can access finance at a much lower rate than the commercial banks currently charge us. Also, license fees to operate businesses of tourism products need to be charged so that, Mr. PSST, they can come back to NTR, your non-tax revenue, and you shall be happy so that when we ask for an increase in our national budget, you will say, yes, this is a sector that is also giving us some money. Access to finance. Borrowed money is very, very expensive in Uganda. I'm speaking now as a practitioner, as an owner, a business owner. We're going to be charged, for example, between 15 to 22% for an OD that we may want for my business. Whereas the government did give some tax rebates during COVID, we did actually not see it translated. The rebate was not a rebate per se. It was just a deferral of taxes. And the taxman came back to claim his taxes after a period of time, but they did. So there were no waivers that were granted to our industry. In the marketing side, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania are going to host AFCON 2027. This is something fantastic for us as a region. However, in 2025, Uganda must be seen in Morocco. We must have a presence in Morocco where AFCON is going to take place so that the spectators are made aware of our tourism offering and they can consciously come and visit Uganda. I'd like to talk about there's a product which when it was an initiative of the Ugandan ambassador to Mombasa. He's been running, this would be the third year that we will have the Uganda-Kenya Coast Tourism Forum. That will be in November this year. And he has brought the business to Uganda under MICE, Meetings, Incentives, Conferences, and Events. We need to replicate such initiatives with other countries consciously, because many times ambassadors no longer, what do they call it now? Pardon me? Yes, commercial diplomacy. Let us take advantage of that. That is something that it's been proved to work. So let us harness. I'd also like to talk about investment. Professor says that we have a few high-end visitors to Uganda. Most of them are VFRs, visiting friends and relations. To tap into the high-end business, by extension, Uganda must invest in luxury, high-end tourism accommodation and products. These are visitors who are discerning. They are high net value individuals. They can spend anything. I think you can Google, you can find from $2,000 up to $23,000 per day, per night in one accommodation unit. Why do we not have such visitors over here? We have an example next door in Kenya of Richard Branson's facility. We need the same. We need to encourage the luxury tourism. Again, Mr. PSST, please, the national budget for tourism must have 10 or 20-fold increase. The human capital under UHTTI is still underdeveloped. We need to have a similar UHTTI in every district in Uganda as a center of excellence, so that we can tap into this huge potential called tourism, which has an amazing multiplier effect. In ending, I'd just like to also, what is close to my heart, we have, of course, a lot of water bodies in Uganda, which are largely untapped. And for your information, in 1890, Robusta coffee was discovered in Uganda. I put it to members here. Uganda is the home of Robusta coffee. Not many people know this fact. The coffee that is grown in Brazil, Venezuela, Vietnam is Robusta coffee, which has its home in Uganda. We must tap into this coffee tourism, which rightly belongs to us as a country. I say this for God and my country.
Thank you, Ms. Pal. I think that was a very good roundup of the presentations earlier made. Mr. PSST, we have made quite a number of asks from you. However, we've also provided the evidence that is needed to back up the asks. We have also showed that there's actually a dividend that can be got from tourism and the potential of the tourism sector. And we have also made an ask to be intentional about this development. The rest we leave to the reflection of all government representatives and institutions present, as well as the development partners here. And right now, I would like us to go into a discussion. Maurice, will you support? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we start here.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the opportunity. My name is Bonnie Kagaba, and I run a safari company called Likana Safaris Uganda. I'm happy my CEO, Madame Lily, is here. Thank you so much. I'll really thank you for the efforts, especially through POWATE, the Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo every year. Thank you so much. It was a success, and I only saw the PSST alone among the government officials. PSST, thank you for supporting tourism. Other officials, I think, visited, but we didn't see them. Professor, my thoughts are to you from Makerere University. I will not repeat what you said, setting up a matching fund for us, because it's very expensive. You can't buy a Land Cruiser with the savings that we get. So if government puts a tourism credit facility, just like for the agriculture, it will be very important. I just wanted to reiterate on that. But my points, Madam Chair, are, you know, we need to enhance the product development knowledge in Uganda, and then also that calls for skills development. But Prof, I wanted to pick your thoughts on encouraging multilingual kind of skills. Ugandans only speak English and Luganda, and you can't attract visitors from a destination called Paris or France, which speaks French, and you know, you're selling a country only in one language. I think that is something critical, because you're locked up. Because I get tourists that come from Paris and France, but you can't design an itinerary because you can't speak French. And we had now to design a department for specifically for that. I got an opportunity at the French embassy to be part of the exhibitors, but I couldn't speak to these clients, and they came to me. So they gave me an interpreter to help me. So that is very critical if we are to go into those other destinations. According to Knight Frank, Madam Chair, in 2018, they wrote a report, a hotel report, where they highlighted Kenya having 68 global chain of hotel. I just wanted to speak to the Madam discussant there who shared about luxury and high-end tourists. I don't want to talk about how many global chains of hotel we have in this country, but I think to attract at a macro level, we need investors to invest in this global, because a tourist, before he leaves Europe or the United States, he checks where he's going to stay. And in Uganda, I think we only have I don't want to speak about them on the microphone, but you know them. That's something that we need. I'm happy she also talked about airfields. You see, PSST, you can't fly from Jinja to maybe CP Falls because there's no airfield. And there are those high-end clients who would want to fly the whole of Uganda domestically. It's on record that we only have 4. You can only fly from Kisoro to maybe Kasese and then maybe to Pakuba in Murchison Falls. Probably also they are redeveloping the airfield in Chidepo. But I call for all the 12 national parks to be, you know, developed with airfields so that there are tourists that are in a certain age who can't sit in the road for all that long.
Thank you.
Lastly,
thank you.
Lastly, Madam, I just wanted to tell people that Uganda, according to Visa and MasterCard, it's the top destination where we have the best weather. And they were asking tourists, why do you travel? And people travel mostly around the world because of the best weather. We are not taking advantage of that. If we could just market, you know, Uganda as a destination for the best weather, we would definitely get the best.
Allow me to cut you short. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, but thank you for the opportunity. And we are marketing Uganda expensively, and it's something that I wanted to let people know. Like there is a TTG travel experience in Italy where we are paid 2,000 euros to be part. And it's only 2 of us. There is a company called Destination Django and us. The rest of 2 operators are not aware. I don't know, but it's very expensive. We need support also to market Uganda. Thank you so much. Because without it,
Thank you so much.
we are going to not have any single visitor visitors. Thank you.
Just to add on his point.
Let's keep the comments, questions, and responses as short as possible. You've used 4 minutes, quite a lot. Huh?
Just to add on his point, I think one way that the experience can be enhanced is through using virtual reality, which can help certain customers get immersive experiences in what Uganda has to offer. I think we should invest more in virtual reality experiences and augmented reality. That can help certain older clients, people who find difficulties into coming to the country, to get the same immersive experience in what Uganda has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Stephen Ibrahim Kitale from NPA Board. We are in the East African community and we have an East African visa. So when we keep our tourists in traffic jam and our neighbors are flying them to destination, we lose out. So we must move that very fast. When we take 10 years to complete our Center of Excellence for Skilling at Crescent Crest, Ginger, but just 7 years ago, Arusa did theirs, and you can see the miracles. You remember Chogam was being managed by Utali? So NAM, I don't know what happened. We must. Even if it means, I know it is tourism is private sector led, but government is an enabler. PSST has a background of UDC, where I was a board member. The Uganda hotels then had a training arm. So I can even share with you, whereas in the Albertine region, we have now the best roads thanks to the oil and gas industry and government intervention, which was intentional. But we are ending at the lake without a waterfront, without a port. Yet investors cannot afford to do a pier. That's a government responsibility. So many Ugandans can afford on Lake Victoria, on Lake Albert, which is navigable, by the way, from Ntoroko to DRC up to Nimule, Sudan. And it used to be there in those days. So we should, as government, invest more in what is our role to enable the private sector, which is really doing their best to invest in this. There's one missed opportunity, as I appreciate the very good infrastructure we have around the Albertine. We have missed an opportunity if we don't do a midterm review in oil and gas. The linkage between oil and gas and tourism. Uganda is currently having 15,000 oil experts living in temporary camps at about $60 a day. All the captains in tourism, they are suffering with 30%, 15% occupancy. In oil and gas camps, $60 is full-time occupancy for 5 to 7 years. Meaning, this would have been a leapfrog, a launch pad for us to put the Chobes, the Mweyas, the Paras, the Afrikaners, 100 of them, or 120, the mountains of the moon, would accommodate all the oil workers for 7 years. So that this high-end tourism we are talking about, I don't know why we did not have a linkage between the oil and gas recoverable cost, and we are looking it to go to West, because these camps are going to be demolished anyway. How did we miss that? I think we can have a midterm review. It's not too late. We can start intentionally as an industrial policy to make sure that whoever has that business must have a terminal scrap value by giving us 15,000 beds from Chikube, Bulisa, Noya, and Pakwachi. And then our PDM,
thank you very much.
Our transformation will be done and many jobs will be given for generations to come, because oil is finite, but tourism is going to be there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tourism is a very hot topic. Yes, please.
Thank you. And I want to thank the panel. Mine is for emphasis, especially seeing the SST here and Mr. Kagwa regarding a harmonized tax policy for the tourism industry, especially the hospitality sector, because no matter how much you attract tourists to this country, as long as the hotels are not up to standard, people who have invested in brick and mortar, I would like a harmonized tax policy as well as good training, because the services are lacking in this country. So I emphasize on UHTTI, but also in supporting the private sector, because they can train themselves, their people. Right now, Uganda Hotel Owners Association has been doing an apprenticeship program where they are skilling without a lot of support from government, but from donors. Thank you to Enabel and ILO. So I call upon Ministry of Finance, let's have a harmonized tax policy where we don't say we don't want to pay taxes, but we don't want to pay 27 taxes, 7 licenses, and this has been a song. But I believe now that we have you in this room, you are going to do something about it. Thank you.
I fully agree. Thank you very much. Maurice, how many more questions shall we take? Okay, 3 more questions. I haven't, 3 here. And then we can close.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Amjulius Mukunda. 2 points. One is on, there is no doubt that the tourism sector is a great contributor to economic development. But I just wanted to know, how are we going to address the issues of economic leakages? Because when a conference comes here, we would want to know, I think our Makerere Don can help us, we would want to know how many Ugandans have benefited from that. And sometimes they usually ask how many Ugandan tomatoes have we eaten and onions, because those are things we contribute some of these particular areas. The second thing is, I think PS local government can support me here. The role of local government in tourism infrastructure development. I visited Arur, and I can tell you, if you don't do something there, sooner or later people will start suing us, because getting there and coming back, I mean, it's really dangerous. So I think in terms of our ATMs, of our in terms of our 10 growth strategy, we need to have that component of how we can support our local governments to develop their tourist sites. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I have 2 comments. The first comment is very generic, general nature, the 2 presenter. I thought the agenda come out with some clear questions for the present to focus what policy, what strategy the country should adopt to develop the high-end services or tourism. But I see that actually most of the presentation bring a lot of data, statistics. It's a kind of highlighting the country situation analysis, country challenges. I thought this is we are all familiar in these situations. Since it's a high-level strategic meeting, I thought this meeting should focus more on the strategy policies which the country should do. For example, this 10-fold increase growth strategy specifically identified that tourism is the one going to be the potential driver to have that 10-fold increase. Currently, the strategies talk about that it's a 2 billion tourism sector. 2 billion to, in 15 years, it take into the 50 billion tourism sector. How do you actually going to increase 25 times in the next 10, 15 years the tourism sector? So that is what this agenda is saying, that what kind of policy strategy should the tourism sector ministry should adopt. Rather, 95% of the presentation talk about tourism arrival, tourism revenue, which I think every year, at least 4 meetings, we have familiar this kind of data statistics. So therefore, my second question related to the productivity. Productivity, I really like the presentation. I like the presentation on the tourism also. But again, a lot of data statistics presented, even inter-country comparison. I don't know whether looking into the only labor productivity is appropriate, because in a labor abundant economy, the internationally ICT sector, financing sector will tend to have a higher labor productivity because it's a high capital intensive sector. If you put $1 million new investment in the ICT, in the high-end services, it may generate less than 100 jobs. But if you put the same million job in tourism sector, in other sector, it may generate 1,000, 10,000 job, decent job. So in a labor abundant economy, where there's a large million new youth coming every year, so what need to focus that how do you going to provide decent employment opportunity to the million new youth coming into the labor force? So therefore, if I have a limited capital, Even I know that labor productivity is very high in the ICT sector, where 15 times higher labor productivity. Whether I am in a dilemma, whether I should put that $1 million in the high productivity ICT sector, where I put it in the labor-intensive tourism sector. So therefore, the discussion should focusing on a broader definition of productivity, both looking to the capital and labor productivity, then we can decide. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Because of time, we'll handle those questions. I would like to first of all go to Mr. PSST. Allow me to indulge you to respond to some of those comments and questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman of the session. You know, in Uganda, people think that women shouldn't be called chairmen. You are chairman. I will respond mainly to the questions of my chair of UTB. 27 different taxes and licenses, tourism levy. We've had a discussion with the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities on these two issues. They made a presentation to our top technical meeting. We discussed, and there is a clear work in progress as far as resolving these matters are concerned. We are going to resolve them. But we resolve them scientifically by making clear analysis. Some of them, we count them emotionally. We shall discuss and resolve them. Number 3, you talked of the deferred taxes vis-a-vis relief. I think deferring the taxes was relief in itself, because those businesses survived the COVID. Now they are back to making money. They should give us some money so that we can be able to invest in tourism. Without this money, we shall not invest in these beautiful things we are talking about. Number 4, the AFCON in Morocco. We have also discussed this with UTB, with yourself and Liri and others. Please go to Morocco. What is the problem? Go to Morocco. Go and ensure that by 2027 we have clear headways. If it is a problem of money, some money in the budget, we shall provide the money. You should go to Morocco. Then the economic and commercial diplomacy. This one we've done, and we are supporting. This year we have started with the 12 embassies across the world where Uganda is represented. We are giving them support to bring here tourists, to bring investors, but also to look for markets for our exports. Those 3 deliverables. And the chair, I remember recently you were part of the strategic meeting, because I would want you, the people in tourism, who manage tourism, to give those people in the embassies what they should market and guide them on how to bring these tourists home. And we are going to scale this intervention in the subsequent years and our strategy. Lastly, the budget of tourism should grow tenfold. I think that's what your ask is, since it is also targeting tenfold growth. The budget of Uganda these days are demand-driven. But this demand should have clear evidence for measurable results. The only challenge I have with the tourism, and I've told you in private, and I will say it here, tourism, we have a very clear message on the need to make a tour. Oh, the bell means what? That I stop here? Okay, I will stop.
You can continue.
Okay, let me finish. Just 1 minute. I was saying that we need to concretize the plan for tourism. Especially, we need to be clear on what and how. It's not clear. We all know we need tourists, we need to market Uganda, but what is the plan on the how? I know several bits of people have brought several plans, and we also have a program of tourism development. We've agreed with the PS in charge of the ministry, in leadership of the program. Let's concretize the plan and the strategy. I liked Professor Ahewa's submission today, but it's interesting. I've never seen him. I think tourism. Who brought the professor? It's a wonderful catch. I liked the first order priorities, second order priority, and kind of analysis. And this should inform the development of tourism, the PIAP, and the programming going forward. We shall definitely support tourism under the 10-fold. But let's work on that plan and the how. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. PSST. I think he has let our fears rest, and we hope that good things will come. I will give my presenters and discussant 2 minutes each to make some concluding remarks, respond to the comments, questions. We start with Mr. Andrew Woma.
All right, well, pretty much all the questions were on my presentation, so I have a lot to talk about. Just kidding. But there was the one question on ICT not being labor absorbing, and that is true. And at the end of my unfinished presentation, there was a couple slides on retail. And retail is really important because it will inevitably employ a lot of people. And in India, they had the ICT boom from the 1980s up until the 2010s. And what happened is that ICT grew enormously in its productivity, but didn't end up employing that many people. But what it did do is increase the demand for consumer services like retail, like administrative services. So I think ICT can play a role, but I think formalizing the retail sector as well as low-skilled domestic services is going to be critical to bringing good jobs to people without, high levels of education. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I just addressed only one question. The rest have been addressed on how do we create the economic linkages. This is very important. In the master plan, we already have the tourism development areas, what we call the TDAs, where the country has been clustered in regions. I think as an entry point to address the economic linkages, it's very important that the ministry and, of course, some investment needs to go in there, that we come up with concrete plans for each TDA. So we identify the different actors at different nodes of the value chain in each TDA, and then we see the training needs that we need to enable them, join the tourism value chain. Some of them actually lack capacity, so that's why they are left out when it comes to economic, gains. So once we do the mapping and clear plans for each TDA, then we're able to identify which intervention areas we need to work on, and then we train the people so that they can be able to tap on the opportunities that tourism is providing. Somebody talked about the oil and gas sector. We cannot actually tap into tourism. Some of those guys, the linkages, we need to identify them. We have already finished some plan for Northwestern Tourism Development Area, and the areas for linkages have been identified. So we just need to actualize some of those things and operationalize, and it will happen. Thank you.
Of course, yes, thank you, Professor. You talked about linkages. Of course, tourism encompasses a lot of other sectors as well. For example, agriculture, agri-tourism or agro-tourism is very big, one of the new things that are being promoted globally. Of course, sustainability is the buzzword which we really, really must, actualize so that Uganda can benefit. Uganda has never been a country that had mass tourism. I think in Italy you have seen, and some parts of Spain, the locals are actually fed up of the tourists. They have so many placards saying, tourists go home. Uganda has never had mass tourism. We've not had like the Thompsons of this world coming to bring their package tours here. So we need to build our profile. We need to build the numbers. I know our strategy is that maybe numbers, but we want quality, but we must find a mix between the two, between the quality of tourists, higher value tourists who will spend more, stay longer in our country and have a lasting effect. And like I said, tourism is very much a business that has a multiplier effect, so that the person or the people in the local governments will be able to, the villagers, the farmers, etc., can be able to benefit as well when they supply the hotels, etc., etc., and send their children to school. So tourism really, really has to be very, very well looked after, and I really must thank the ministry for bringing it to the fore with their strategic plan, the ATMs, agriculture, tourism, mining, and we really are very, very happy that at this time tourism has been brought to the prominence it deserves. I submit.
Thank you. I would like to thank the discussant and the presenters for a well-elaborated and articulated tourism agenda. Members of the audience, I would also like to thank you for being a good audience. I would also like to thank you for the comments, for the responses. I would like to thank you for the contributions you have made. Mr. PSST, you have had many asks, and I hope that we can work together with the tourism ecosystem to actually actualize the dividend that we can get from the tourism sector.
And ICT.
Since I'm representing the Permanent Secretary Ministry of ICT, it would not be fair for me to leave here without saying that we need to actually harness ICT across all sectors. And I would like to stress this with a projection that was made by the African Union that by 2030, 60% of the market will be digital. So how can we as a country leverage this to make sure that we get more dividends from the tourism sector? I thank you.
Surely we can appreciate this team much better. Round of applause for Dr. and her team. I totally agree with PSST. I think PSST, we will couldn't have picked a better panel than this to discuss tourism. And Professor Wilbur, expect a lot of calls from UBC. We need to discuss this extensively. Everybody needs to know what you just shared on this platform. Fortunately, you are live on UBC and all the other partner stations. So Ugandans PSST had what we had to say about tourism. And we are still live. So thank you very much, panel. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Port being given information for them to boost the economy of this country. And therefore, supporting agro-industrialization in the tenfold is very, very, very key, and is going to do a very big boost to the tenfold development of the economy of Uganda. And of course, that goes with the whole idea of also investing in the subnational governments. It's very, very, very important because it's an investment in the people. Sometimes there are questions about that when you invest in the people, those resources are not productive. But if you went to New York this month and next month, you will see how much resources are going to be spent around the General Assembly business, which is majorly centering around governance. But governance, looking at the people at the center of everything, at the center of climate change, at the center of all these issues of service delivery. So I'm very excited that PDM takes center stage, and I must applaud government and the president for this beautiful idea, which is going to help to be a game changer in terms of one, dealing with the population itself, dealing with the biggest part of our economy, and this for sure will lead us to our targeted tenfold. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good. I'm going to turn the question open to the audience here in just a minute. So think about what questions you'd like to ask. But let me ask the PS, many of your colleagues are pointing out very important needs as part of the tenfold program in the area of investment, and particularly use of public resources. At the same time, Uganda is entering a period of fiscal consolidation. This is tough times in a sense. The public sector deficit has got to come down if Uganda is going to maintain this current level of price stability and investment grade in international markets. So my question to you is, how can this process of fiscal consolidation occur at the same time when the demand for resources, if anything, is increasing? And maybe what are the key elements of financing that you might look to looking to the future?
Thank you. And this is a very good question when I'm seated between my two colleagues here, because we need more resources to go into our strategy. And we've agreed this is the right thing to do. And our fiscal consolidation agenda, which is ongoing, we are saying we should repurpose the way we spend money by moving resources towards the ATMs, but also the fundamentals that are needed to drive these ATMs. That means that we must have some trade-offs. We must have some trade-offs in the way we plan our budget and we spend the limited resources we have. Two, we must also be innovative to attract resources from the non-traditional sources. In the presentations I've been able to sit in here, and I think this is the first forum where I've almost sat in Fule. In the previous years, these people have been disturbing me. I said today, no, let's sit all here. I've seen they are saying, please, think of climate financing. Green financing is the way to go. Think of actualizing the PPPs. Think of leveraging the capital markets. And I think the Deputy Governor has alluded to it as well here. And we are working with him to see how we deepen this area of long-term finance. Because the Ugandans have the money, and the non-Ugandans also want to come and invest with us. But we must work on the frameworks, and we are improving them. So, green financing, PPPs, areas of capital markets, and foreign direct investment. Very key, foreign direct investment. But above all those ones, the foundation, the strong foundation to drive the tenfold growth is going to be financed through increased domestic revenue mobilization. Ugandans must know countries are developed when the citizens of that country pay taxes, and those taxes are invested in critical public sector investments or projects which provide public goods to support the private investments. So these roads we are saying we should construct, you have seen, I think it was the professor from Toronto. He has shown us our city is the slowest because we don't have enough infrastructure, not because we are so congested. We are actually not among the highly congested. Congestion is not the problem, but the infrastructure. How do we build this infrastructure? We need the money. Where do we get the money from? From Ugandans. Somebody says, no, you are not spending the money so well in the government, so we shall not pay the taxes. I think that's not a very good idea. Everywhere in the world, taxes are not quid pro quo. They are non-quid pro quo. Pay the taxes, hold the government to account. When they don't account, vote them out. The politicians, us, hold us accountable. We are permanent secretaries now with the very short-term contracts. If we don't deliver, we shouldn't be here. We go home. There are so many Ugandans who can deliver. For me, I think this is the seriousness, Richard, which we need to bring on board. That's why I said we must clean up, we must team up, we must skill up, we must link up, and also green up. Those 5 ups, they are the ones we are going to put on emphasis to ensure that we can deliver the strategy.
Thank you. I know at the end of this session, Maurice is going to say, well, it's time to drink up, but we'll see what happens here. You did mention the importance of domestic finance here and domestic savings and public savings, increasing public savings through increasing tax revenue. I'm wondering, from the vantage point of the private sector, retained earnings is a terribly important source of finance for private investment. But we saw earlier that private investment actually has fallen in Uganda. How do you square this? Do you see, as part of the tenfold program, an opportunity for reigniting investment through increased retained earnings, increased private savings in the corporate sector?
Thank you very much. Just for purposes of information and then transferring the knowledge, you see, most of the financing that has been taking place in the private sector has actually been retained income. Not because of anything else, but due to the fact that the financing cost, especially in the manufacturing sector, a 20% interest rate for a manufacturer is doomsday, because question at hand, what is the return on investment in the manufacturing sector? Is it 10, 20, 30? And how do you square it up with the financing cost of 20%? So most of the working capital, the asset production, has either been retained income or, may I add, actually borrowing from outside the country in dollar values, which is sometimes cheaper than trying to do it locally. And then the other thing is the tenure. The tenure has also been so tough on the private sectors, especially in the manufacturing and industrial sector. A 3 to 5 year tenure of borrowings cannot really take place within the manufacturing sector. So again, that's why it has been for some time a revenue reinvestment. So why is it dropping? We have just concluded another study, courtesy again of the PSST, telling us, please, studies, research. And what are we realizing? We are realizing that Two things. On the one side, you have had this high cost of financing. On the other side, the markets around us have either been at best volatile, and for example, from the UNDP study, Uganda is supposed to have been the best respondent to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in East Africa. And what are we seeing? The most of the markets we were supposed to take our goods to were the Eastern Congo, down a little bit to Angola, our brothers in Kenya and South Sudan. And what are we realizing from the private sector is that the South Sudanese market, the Congolese market is really volatile. And if you are not going to grow in those markets, that means your capacity utilization is going to go down, and if your capacity utilization is going down, you're going to invest less. So what we are seeing on the board that is reduced investment, especially from the private sector, is following the market trends and trying to see that you have enough sustenance to keep you going even at 54% capacity utilization. So those are some of the challenges we are facing, and that's what you are seeing being reflected in the research.
One of the keys, if I can just cut in there just a minute, one of the keys to taking advantage, as you mentioned, were the export markets. Next to you is seated a representative from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. What would you like to see the ministry do, as well as maybe the central bank and the other colleagues on this table, do to help promote exports from the manufacturing sector, and not only the manufacturing sector, but I think the tourist operators, of course, are part of the export scene in Uganda that's terribly important. What's sort of most important for opening up external markets from your vantage? No, I'm asking you. Sorry, Dr. Eza.
Thank you very much. So what we have seen is that we have a two or threefold challenge. When we talk about market access or exports, we have tended over a period of time to think that foreign markets are like local markets, where you just get in there and begin to sell. But what we are seeing is the strategy into foreign markets is a slightly different strategy. You must actually aggregate for exports, and the Kenyans have shown us a way. For those of you who enjoy studies, you realize that the AGOA program at the end of 2 years ago, it was 93% dominated by Kenyans, and the 7% was for the rest of the East Africans. And it was because of the strategy that the Kenyans put in place. What does that mean? Aggregation for exports. Mm-hmm. So we know that the Congolese market consumes a lot of meat, consumes poultry, consumes milk. If I am going to export to the Congolese market, I must aggregate and work with agents in Congo. Not try to go there with a few cartons of milk every single time, but rather mass export so that you are able to catch up. The other aspect also we are dealing with is the risk factor, actually, because sometimes there's volatility in these regions. How do you de-risk your exports? How would you ensure that if, for example, a small war broke up in Goma, that whatever you have exported, you can still get compensated for that. We saw it in Sudan a few years ago, where exports were not compensated after the war broke out. So the question is, again, de-risking those exports. So we want to see movement around de-risking, movement around aggregation for exports, movement around... Maybe let me give this one example just to ensure we understand what we're talking about. The government has managed to get for us a market in Algeria for milk. Till this date, we have managed not to send milk to Algeria just because of a slight, simple reason: traceability. So you see that, yes, you can have the market, but the access to that market becomes difficult because you have not organized yourself back home very well. So
maybe... Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe Dr. Joseph, you can sort of add to that, because I know that you as head of marketing for MTEC play an important role in this. Are there particular things that the Ugandan government, as part of its next steps in implementing the Tenfold program, ought to be undertaking in order to promote exports?
Thank you very much. One critical factor we have discussed is the establishment of the export-free zones, because with these special economic zones, that means you are likely to control what he's talking about in case of bulking, case of traceability, and the quality of the products. We're also looking at promoting the international global standards, GS1 barcodes, because this again also helps focus on areas of e-commerce, traceability, and cross-border management. We're also looking at establishing the one border posts, and those are areas, for example, the border with the DRC, with Kenya, with South Sudan. All those are critical infrastructure that we need to establish, because as he has said, there are issues of the logistic hubs, and therefore that can help. Of course, we're also looking at working on our transport, like the railway lines, the airlines. All those need critical resources. Another area they have talked about is this commercial diplomacy, because globally, maybe our products are not known. But if we can have our presence in those critical markets, that will help. As he has said, not necessarily that every producer has to go physically to those markets. So if we can support these producers and the manufacturers to make sure that their products can be extended in those international trade fairs, international exhibitions, that's an area that we also think that it is very critical.
No, I think that's a really terribly important point. You know, I know another country that actually grades its commercial attaches in foreign embassies on the rate of growth of their country's exports to their country. And each year, there is a performance review of the commercial attache to say, you know, what new products have you placed in that foreign market, and how much have, in this case, it would be Uganda's exports grown in that particular market. When the Brazilians made their first big export drive way back in the 1970s, it was precisely because of the commercial attaches and foreign embassies linked up to the production process that really, and the marketing process that was really fundamental in all of this. Maybe we could think about new markets also for tourism, because tourism predominantly coming from Africa. I was amazed at the graphs that we saw earlier, that such a large share came from Africa, but a lot of I suspect that's business tourism. I wondered if new markets might also be pioneered through the MISI programs that you were talking about, PS Doreen, or perhaps some of the marketing efforts in Europe, and even the United States and China, which are now really big, really important for the tourism industries. What do you think?
Thank you very much, Richard. Marketing and promotion, and maybe I didn't talk about that because it has really been talked about a lot. So for this planning period, for example, I am glad that finally there is money that has been allocated specifically for commercial diplomacy. But as tourism, and like you saw from the statistics, our biggest numbers have been coming from within the region. So what we have done as part of the strategy is to identify key source markets. Most of them, of course, are, you saw that the US, the African region is still top. So we have to look to consolidate in those markets where we've been, but we're also looking at the new markets, just like you mentioned, the Gulf states, the China. So there are many other upcoming markets where we are now, so the 10 missions that the PSST was talking about are including countries like Turkey. So we are also trying to enter these new markets. And as a program, as tourism development program, in addition to the money that has been given as allocation or appropriation, we have also taken some money to give to these markets. We have identified 10 to start with and hope that we can continue growing so that we have specific guidelines to these missions abroad to grow the tourism specifically.
Oh, great. I know that as part of this, one of the industrial policies that comes out of the literature, including some things that the PS has written, focus a little bit on the role of critical subsidies, targeted subsidies through the financial system to exporters, to SMEs, and linking up SMEs with larger exporters. Are there particular programs, Deputy Governor, that maybe you would see as being really useful, looking again through the lens of the tenfold program, that maybe ought to be expanded as resources allow? Maybe, by the way, some that we might get the World Bank to finance too eventually. I see the World Bank in the audience, so we should bring them into the picture here eventually.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. So when I look at the ATMs, let's take agriculture, for example. Agriculture is deemed to be risky by a number of formal financial institutions. So certainly to incentivize them to lend to agriculture, we have to get some form of de-risking finance so that they're encouraged to lend in there. So right now we have some programs that could be scaled up. So for example, under the Agricultural Credit Facility, these programs do exist whereby government provides funds rated at 0%, and then commercial banks that participate in this program also offer their own resources, 50% each. And then when you average the interest rates to agriculture, they are much, much lower. They're basically at almost a half of what they would have got if the loan was entirely funded by the commercial bank. So what we now need to do is to see how we can increase the capitalization of the Agricultural Credit Facility, whose main objective is to increase production and value addition as well. Then also there's a program under a negotiation. This is called the INVITE program with the World Bank, which focuses on sectors where Uganda has a comparative advantage, such as agro-processing and maybe minerals. So I think focusing on such programs to include value chain financing would be very, very important in promoting exports and also meeting international standards and the volume requirements. Now, this INVITE program would also benefit from the efforts that the Uganda Bankers Association have put in place. They have a facility called the Regional Export Facility. And if you look at the objectives of this facility, together with the forms of financing that they're looking at, they fit neatly with what this World Bank INVITE program is all about. So I think really ensuring that this program comes in place would be one way to ensure that the promotion of exports through value chain financing and what have you would actually facilitate the small, medium enterprises in promoting exports. And then also on our own as the central bank, we are moving into a domestic gold purchase program. And this is basically looking at small miners, the artisanal miners and the local refineries, and we'll be buying this gold in Uganda shillings for the purposes of increasing and diversifying our reserves. So we think that indirectly by doing that, we are supporting the local producers of this gold and in ensuring that what would have otherwise been exported and we buy forex from the market, we are doing it directly with them. So that's one way that we're supporting them. But most importantly also, we are taking advantage, we're leveraging on supporting fintechs and digital financial services because we believe that these have the capacity to reach the bottom of the pyramid. Now, if you look at the usage of these platforms now, in terms of extending savings, credits, and insurance, it is actually increasing. So how do we scale up the usage of the things here to ensure that the bottom of the pyramid who are participating in the production, including that of exports, also get advantage to be financed? Now, of course, the challenge will be how do we de-risk this financing so that we lower the interest rate that is, given to them. So the whole aspect in supporting export through the financial system government, it revolves around the risking in the available financial instruments that are aimed at providing support for these exporters. And this is something that we need to work together with the government.
Great, that's very helpful. Thinking about it through the lens of local governments, what are the priorities, you think, for linking up communities to export markets, right? It's not the only name of the game, right? But it's an important part of the story. If we think about the 18 commodities that are part of the PDM, for example, a lot of those are export commodities. But beyond that, tourism is very important to many of the local governments and the local communities. What do you see as the sort of the key things that we ought to be thinking about in linking up these communities with international markets and the domestic market?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the key issues that we need to look at, which actually fits in the other pillars of PDM, is to invest into connectivity and accessibility. For example, we need to make sure that the road networks between the hinterlands, between the where farming is taking place, are worked on to make sure that goods can move freely, pursuing money, pursuing buyers, pursuing traders. So certainly we need to invest into Pillar 2, infrastructure and economic services. Then we must also invest into agro-processing and value addition. We have made a boost in production. Last year alone, we had a bumper harvest in Masindi area and Unyoro area of a lot of maize, and I'm sure certainly farmers must have lost after not getting the right market. So we must also make sure that as a serious matter of consideration, we invest into agro-processing and value addition to make sure that we can extend the shelf life of these products that we are going to support under PDM. To me, I think if we move into that in the first year of our 10-fold plan, the other things can also follow, and we shall really make a robust position of the PDM investments.
Fabulous. Maurice, do we have time to take questions from the audience? Because I do think this would be a real opportunity to he's consulting the most. Yeah, I think the answer was yes. So, questions from the audience, please. We'd be delighted to. This is an opportunity. These are the people that are going to be shaping fundamentally the 10-fold program as it evolves and also works down to individual ministries. So, we'd certainly welcome your questions. Over here, yes, please. Once again, please identify yourself and keep the question short because I suspect we'll have more than one.
Sure. Thank you so much, Prof. Once again, my name is Bonnie Kagawa, and I run a company called Likana Safaris. My question is to my PS, Ms. Doreen. You really spoke well about conservation efforts, and I know the world is talking about sustainable tourism and responsible tourism, and Uganda is largely private sector driven, especially the tour sector. What are your thoughts of telling the private sector like us to come up with initiatives that is going to drive responsible tourism and sustainability? Because most of the guys are really motivated by the profits. Much as you regulate, these thoughts are not really in our hearts. What do you think we should do to support government to come up with responsible and conservation kind of efforts in our business model? Because you know what's happening in Murchison Falls National Park, the oil explorations and stuff like that. How can the private sector be part of that? Maybe lastly, I wanted to talk to the PS local government. Tourism supports a lot of local government development. When park entrances, permits, and what is collected, they really do a sharing model. Like you see, the ministry through UWA gets a lot of money and really gives communities such spoils of the tourism. So you have a lot to do and support tourism. Thanks so much.
Okay. Yes, please. I think we'll take a series of questions and think about who would like to answer what question. I won't try to mediate them too much, but
thank you very much. My name is Daniel Ayebari, and I work with the Uganda Financial Literacy Association, but I also work with young people. My first question is to our partners from Uganda Manufacturers Association. We all know that a strong middle class is very important on this agenda, and because it provides, one of the reasons is because it provides a strong base, consumer base that drives productive investment. From your studies, what are some of the interventions to protect and enhance the middle class, especially those in employment? We did not discuss a lot about the labor interventions, and I hope we can get something from you. Secondly, Dr. Ating, Deputy Governor, I know you're passionate about agriculture. There is a growing concern, especially in the developed world. The Gen Zs are becoming more cautious and concerned about key products in agriculture, talking about meat especially. And livestock generally is considered the second largest contributor to climate change after housing and construction. The second reason is livestock farming is looked at as wasteful. More than 24% of agricultural land is directed towards livestock. So it means that as we are focusing on promoting agriculture, there is a chance or a possible shock that the people that we're also targeting for our market might be less interested in some of these products. And if our Gen Zs here also take it up and they say, we are not going to go for meat, we are going vegan because of some of these movements, what will that mean for us, and what are some of the interventions or the ways we should start planning for some of those shocks? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, please. Let's get a microphone. I think it would be helpful. Can we have a microphone being run around here? I think that would be useful. If your microphone is hot, I'll take this question. The lady back there, please. No, yeah, please. She has the advantage of having a hot mic. Here comes a microphone over to you. Yeah,
Good
please.
afternoon. My name is Jen Okello. I'm the Operations Director at the Uhuru Institute. As was talking about different things, one that caught my attention was the ICT development. And the aspect that came to mind is how much do Ugandans love what is made in Uganda? In light of if we have ICT localized in terms of, let's say if we're producing our own phones, we are producing different ICT, how much will Ugandans buy? And I really want to challenge us in this room. If you look around, what are you using that is made in Uganda? Because most countries are protecting their markets, whether it's the US or China. How do we produce and consume what we are producing? Thank you.
Okay, let's come back over here. I've given him.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Chair. My name is Palanivel. I'm from UNDP. First, I wanted to actually appreciate the panel member, especially the Deputy Governor of Central Bank, to recognizing the importance of the de-risking instrument for the important sector like agriculture's, SMEs, value chain, financing, etc. The one thing we feel that it would be, more appropriate for the export, the instrument like export credit guarantee scheme, export credit insurance scheme. The country used to have such a scheme like 15, 20 years back, but somehow it's not continued that since most of the exporter in this country exporting to the politically unstable neighboring countries, having such actually export credit guarantee scheme or export credit insurance scheme would be more appropriate, this tenfolding this growth strategy. Thank you.
Okay, I see Mukami's hand is up here from the World Bank. Since we've taken your name in vain several times in the course of this conference, Mukami, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Richard. I think I just wanted to ask about leveraging the facilities and the projects and programs that are ongoing towards the tenfold strategy. because a lot of the platforms exist. You talked about Invite, Deputy Governor, and the Invite program has the opportunity to explore all the types of facilities that you are saying might be needed, both from the platform here, the team that's on the platform, but also from the audience. So I think the question is really how to relook at what we have on the table in the context of the tenfold strategy, and to see how we can perhaps adjust our focus and our attention to those activities so that we have a much more concerted effort. I think PS came up with a series of team ups that we have to focus on, and I think this would perhaps be something that would be useful for us to look at. We launched the GROW project a few days ago, which is providing loans to small and medium women entrepreneurs at a maximum of 10.5%. And I think that one of the suggestions that came through the launch was to try and see how we can target specific groups, say tourism, women in tourism, women enterprises in tourism, or ICT, to see what is required to assist them to get the support that's necessary for them to grow their businesses. So similarly, if we do the same for Invite and other facilities that are ongoing, this might help us to advance faster. So thank you. Just want to hear if there's any thoughts towards that from the panel.
Actually, I do think that's a really interesting question, because there's kind of an alphabet soup of programs that are designed particularly to reach and make more inclusive SMEs, particular constituencies, regional constituencies, for particular purposes. Thinking about how that all fits together, I think, is really important. We have 5 questions on the table. Let me take the far left, one on the far left over there, if that's okay. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I think for me is the issue. I have only 2 issues. One is to the governor. And I agree with you that we need more resources to finance the 10 Growth program. But the strategy to enable Ugandans to save is what we are missing. And I would be glad to see how the Bank of Uganda can take lead on enabling ordinary Ugandans, really, to buy bonds of 1,000 shillings, 5,000 shillings, to be able to start saving. I want to hear from that. And the second and the last for me is, I think, is for the PSST. I mean, you've sat through and heard all our wishes. And I think the challenge before you right now is, where is the list of the priority? What comes first? When can we get it? And how are we going to roll this out? I think it would be very important. And I agree with the World Bank. We already have things in place, but I think our biggest challenge is setting priorities right. Thank you.
I'm going to take 2 more questions, one from the National Planning Authority, but one from a woman, because I think we've been underrepresented. She has had her hand way up back there. Let's go with you first. Your microphone, is this one of my staff people? Oh my goodness. Okay, let's maybe while...
A woman here. Another woman here.
Okay, hold it. Time out. Another woman over here, please.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm called Agnes from Uganda Revenue Authority, but my question is not about taxes, but of course, when you talk about the tenfold growth, automatically we must talk about tenfold growth in revenue. But I know that will come. My question is related to information that kept coming in yesterday and into today, related to countries that have moved from the third world to the first world, the likes of South Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, a place where Uganda was before. We've had such engagements, very, very good engagements in the past. How is this going to be different for us to implement this strategy? And my question is to PSST. The mindset change of the citizens. What plan do we have to change the minds of Ugandans to embrace this journey, that they are actually ready to embrace it and run with it? And closing my question is in regards to what the PSST has been emphasizing, that we must clean up. And if we again relate to those countries, there are certain characteristics, there are certain ways in which the citizens and the leaders embraced the changes and the transformation. Is Uganda ready to take the courage to do the cleanup so that whatever we've documented, we can actually implement them and see this change come? And when we do that, I believe that we shall realize this tenfold growth. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last question from the NPA. Please be brief. We're running out of time.
Thank you so much. My first one is information and possibly a question to the Deputy Governor. That as we are trying our best as government to try and get financial inclusion through PDM and all other efforts, and thanks to the GROW project, it is a reality shock that our women, our struggling young people, as we try to go PDM, they are money lenders at every parish, lending at over 20% a month. And yet they are getting money from commercial banks at 15 to 18%. Deputy Governor, what are we doing to regulate that excess? On behalf of NPA, it's more, of course, I should do, not be posing question, I should be providing part of the solutions to support my PSST. We want to appreciate the 2 days intervention, the Gen Z pressure. We've just had a population census, which is informing us of a very young population which is dependent. And now as NPA, we are taking on responsibility to be part of yesterday's debate of the demographic dividend, because now Population Council is under us. So we have been listening in from yesterday and would want to work more with IGC since we are part of the PSST's team. But also the debate in the morning on densities and organization of the cities also falls to us, because starting next month, NPA subsumes the responsibility of the National Fiscal Development Plan. The National Fiscal Development Plan may have come late. We should have had it at the time we had the KCCA Act and declaring the whole country planning area in 2010. But much as it has come late, we are going to do everything possible to make sure that we work with all the cities, we work with all the municipalities, we work with not only Kampala, but the greater Kampala, but to make sure that the whole country is zoned. Because as the population is growing, as we do the industrial parks, we must also have land for production. I want to appreciate this very important discussion, and we look forward to always work with this effort. We thank you, IGC and Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much. Let's do the following. Let's do just a quick tour of the panel. Pick out the questions that you'd like to address, and everybody gets 2 minutes. Is that a fair go? Let's start with the private sector once again. This is a private sector-led growth, private sector-led panel, right?
Thank you very much. I was asked the question around the middle class and how we can grow it. The simple answer is this. We as Ugandans must come to the realization that until we begin to produce things, we are really not going to grow. We have 50% of our population being dependent. That means the only way to get out of that poverty trap is actually more production. That means, therefore, you see, the middle class depends entirely. The GDP is growing. The question at hand is, how is the Gini coefficients? Is the middle class really growing? So how to get the middle class growing is to increase the production and productivity. Then it literally brings us back to how we planned for the NDP4. Which are the core activities? Which ones are the enablers? And we must really begin to siphon out and say, okay, this is really an enabler, and therefore we will. How do you prioritize where the coefficients of production within that NDP? Then the issue also of the savings, because savings are literally going to lead to investment. And what we are seeing actually is that there is the formalized sectors are actually contributing more to the savings, and those are the savings that we are seeing in the NSSFs of this world. And therefore the question then at hand is, as the governor said, how do you twist and turn the acts that govern the NSSFs to help actually go into investment? And so literally the issue is about how do you get to the core to increase production and productivity first and foremost in this country.
That is really the question of the day. Thank you, Dr. Arza. Please, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you very much. I would like to address myself to the question on protecting the markets. I think Uganda, being a member of World Trade Organization, and we are in the customs union, we have some protocols to adhere to, and there are measures and preferential trade schemes that the government promotes. And in this case, that's the reason why we promote value addition and diversification of products, so to speak, innovations, because it's also not at the same time very, very key to protect. You are given a time frame on how long you can protect your markets. And therefore, we promote high import substitution and research and development so that we can have kind of products that our markets here really deserve. Another area that we really promote is that the FDIs, because if we can be able to establish industrial parks, attract FDIs and partnerships, then we'll be able to bring back home the kind of products that would be imported to be manufactured locally, and therefore to be able to satisfy the local markets. Otherwise, you cannot protect more of the domestic markets. You'll be in breach of the protocols that Uganda has ratified too. Thank you.
Maybe we'll leave the Deputy Governor and the PS to last so that they can answer all the hard questions. Maybe PS Doreen, let's...
There was a specific question, I think, from Mr. Kagawa regarding sustainable and responsible tourism. I would like to say that the CEO of Uganda Tourism Board, who is seated at the back, is one person who is very passionate about this subject and should probably have spoken very well about it. But I wanted to say that this conversation about sustainability is a very important one. It cuts across all the sectors. But as a sector, we have, I just want to give one example, that when we had the POATE, which stands for Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo, it's an annual tourism expo. And this year, the theme for the expo was responsible tourism. After that expo, when we were doing a review, everybody said, can we have the same theme for the next POATE? Which means the message was very important. And what we are doing is really working with the private sector because, like everyone has emphasized, tourism is private sector driven. The fact that we are having these bottles here and we are drinking from these bottles is an example that the hotel industry has embraced this message, because as a sector we have said, let's do away with the single-use plastic bottles in hotels. And now I'm very delighted to see that Serena is on board. Most of the hotels now you go to, you will not find them serving water in plastic bottles. But that is just one aspect of the sustainability and responsible tourism. So I think for us as government, our job should be more educative, more mindset change, more awareness, but we should also use the regulation because we regulate most of these industries. So we need to emphasize, but also have these conversations all the time about if you are visiting the national parks. We've been having problems with people throwing litter all over the place. So how do we enforce that you have to find a better way of waste management. In the hotels, how are we utilizing the renewable energy? People are now, going more to solar. How do you utilize the water? So these are conversations we are already starting, but we need to also hear more from the private sector on the best way we can do them. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. P.S. Ben?
Well, what I can say is that, to me, the exciting bit is that today we heard from practitioners who are dealing with these things with passion. I think when I heard Madam Kakoza here talk about the hotel industry or Mrs. Susan Muhwezi, I saw people who have passion about what they are talking about. And therefore, for decision makers that are going to influence the tenfold, to have these people brought here to be allowed and given a chance to air out their views is a very, very important thing. And therefore, I think if we pick what we have heard from here and we build it together with the decisions we are going to make as we actually plan to budget in this first 10-year tenfold, I think we are going to get better results. Thank you.
Fabulous. Deputy Governor?
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, the Gen Zs. Well, look, agricultural sector has many products, of which animal products is one of them. So if the Gen Zs are going to go for vegan or vegetarian diets, it still comes from agriculture. So we will still focus on agriculture. That's my question, my answer to you, Daniel. On the export credit guarantee scheme, yes, you're right. We've put in place those schemes, and I think I mentioned the Invite project also has the same concept. The Uganda Bankers Association, under the Regional Export Facility, is also putting in place one. So if the two could work together, I think what the Uganda Bankers Association is doing could crowd in another 50% from the World Bank under that partnership. But the aspect that you raised was about political risk. Now, I don't know to what extent the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency can answer that question that comes out of the political risks from exports. But one thing that I'm aware of, and I don't want to speak to it, I will leave it for the PSST. Some time back, we had that kind of thing with South Sudan. You recall some exporters who actually exported to South Sudan, and a war broke out, and some arrangement was put in place with government. Now, the PSC can guide whether they want to continue with that arrangement. I agree with what the country director for the World Bank has mentioned, that we need to relook at what we have currently in Invite in the context of the 10-fold growth strategy. I think that's a very welcome move to focus on it. Then finally, the question on the money lenders. I don't want a mission creep. Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority is responsible for money lenders. So I don't want to talk on their behalf. But one thing I'll tell you is, why do people go for loans that are highly priced compared to others? There are a number of reasons. Maybe they're ignorant, and maybe the ease with which they get the money, not knowing the consequences. But, as I said earlier on, we are focused on supporting fintechs and digital financial services. And to the extent that these are now collaborating with the formal financial institutions, we expect that the kind of rates that they are going to offer the chaps at the bottom of the economic pyramid.
Ekuyamba okumenya ku magumbana bw'omaliriza menya ku magumbana oba wakuddayo ewaka nga bukeddena ndiyaddeko yaddeko wadde ebitabo tebyawera bibolako naye neebaza mungu ndiyaddeko You and I we belong together. Yeah. Yes, boss, I go by the names Grenade Official. 30th, ngenda kubeera ku Beat Mike. Yeah? Beera ko. Kubanga botabaako gwa n'amaanya Official.
Asidiki fokusi kakaire ndewini kolbuni Zekene wombese wena ndikubeta mumpagire Mbete rugogo mwide banange mumpagire Ngasa togwo munana Nina konsati rugogo Irina tujese ne musoga Pidose rugogo kurigado Banange tike kadi weire Ulio mwida neche biricho Abitekisi na tekeke Vya ipidanga ne darujo Imabenda tebo Ukaire bubiri bunka Ngasa tugu unana Uli musoga vayo juba Ida Oba yu uli musoga ni wabata uli musoga Nikubeta mwena Ni musoga
The Top 100 Mid-Size Companies Survey is back and bigger. Are you an SME looking for business growth, digital inclusion, financing solutions, and want to know how you rate against your peers in the market? Participate in this year's Top 100 SME Survey to get a shot at harnessing new opportunities across the business value chain. Participation is voluntary and free of charge. All you need are 3 years audited books of accounts, have an annual turnover between 360 million to 25 billion shillings, and an insurance company or a bank. For more information or inquiries, please call 0312 1700 or 0704 41 63 56. Brought to you by the Daily Monitor in partnership with KPMG. Powered by Equity Bank, Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Uganda Securities Exchange, Innovation Village, and Huawei Technologies.
It seems a dream, but not a dream.
Enyanda kati ku mutimbagano gwa ipepa nga tukuwa amawulire ag'enjawulo ebyemizannyo n'ag'akagwago wonna bw'oli ku muwendo ogukyasinza okubeera ogwa wansi. Kati weekuumire mu kumanya n'amawulire ag'enjawulo ebyemizannyo agakuno n'ag'ebweru ng'omupiira, tennis, ebikonde, emisinde mu bunabyalo, autoracing n'ebirala bingi. Kati kyali ya ipepa.nation.africa/UG okumanya ebisingawo obaweereza obako ba WhatsApp ku noti 782 441 917. Olw'osasula shillings 5 buli wiiki, shillings 2000 buli mwezi, shillings 8 okumala emyezi 3, omutwalo gw'omwezi 3 ekitundu ky'omwaka, oba emitwalo 26 okumala omwaka mulamba. Ennyanda ekutuusibwako Monte Publications Limited.
Abantu ba Kigezi Seeds of Gold Farm Clinic yagaruka. Abantu ba Kabare, Kisoro, Kanungu, Ruchiga, Rubanda na Western Region yona. Nation Media Group ahamuna naro bakuletera Seeds of Gold Farm Clinic iyo murundi gwa 38 omuri Kabare omuramo gwo Murundi baraza guteka ahabyente embuzi, apples, emondi, engano na nebyenkoko. Ijo yetabe omu Farm Clinic orwa mukaga okwamwenda ebiro 28 omwaka 2024 ahakachweka no Zonal Research and Development Institute Kazadi kutandika na shahemwe ezakasheshe kwisia sha 11 zihangwe. Orenda kumanya bekikiraho
listen to Dr. New Farmer up to the end. But we are all here seated, listening, having a conversation because it was very well incentivized. And it keeps us going and going, even at the risk of eating a little bit cold lunch. And there is no danger here. You can easily walk out if you chose to. But the incentives side worked. The way they packaged the Albertis and all the teams that have worked on this, the way they packaged this. So how do we package our development agenda in such a way that it is well incentivized, but also we create the other side, the danger aspect, what sometimes you call the carrot and the stick. And I think that's what in Uganda we need to do. That's why I emphasize those 5 R's. The first 2 point to that discipline. Discipline of execution. Yes, Prof.
You know, I have to say that I was playing Maurice's mind game here, you know, our telecommunication game where you check a word and see what it says to describe this team and this discussion. And I wrote down a set of words, Maurice. We can do this next time. But, you know, one of the words are actually quite remarkable that I think reflects this remarkable set of leaders that you have. You're knowledgeable, talented, collegial, intelligent. Some of the words I can't even read. However, the last one I think, which is perhaps the most important, is committed. I think this characterizes the leaders you have in front of you, Uganda. Uganda, you are very lucky. Join me in giving them a round of applause.
All right. So this really is a rare moment. You don't get these very often. You may only get this when the PS Forum sits, which is once in a quarter. And we have a good representation of the key drivers of the national economy. The only missing link was energy, and she was coming, but I think got a hiccup. So if we had energy here, Dr. Albert, we have the entire economy, because health and education are part of human capital development. Those ones we can deal with, and they're obvious, all right? So I want to appreciate the entire panel. Can we appreciate Dr. Richard Newfarmer and his team? Thank you so much. I honestly think we need to appreciate the IGC more, because the presentations we've seen over the last 2 days have been well done and very insightful. And I want to appreciate Dr. Richard and the entire IGC team. May I request the IGC team to stand for recognition? The entire IGC team, please stand, because we want to appreciate you. And I want the team here to clap for you, the entire IGC team. Thank you. Thank you so much. We know you've put in a lot of time. There have been some sleepless nights over the last few days. And team IGC, job well done. May I also appreciate the entire Ministry of Finance team. For you, I won't ask you to stand because we know you. Some of you are wearing 2 tags. You have the ID, the office ID, and the conference tag. So we know who you are. We appreciate you. PSST, may I say, if there was commitment at any level, I think the team at the Ministry of Finance are extremely proud of that office. That's the one ID you will find every day if you're in the streets of Kampala. They are wearing their ID for the ministry. And it's so clean and clear. We can tell that this is the Ministry of Finance. But I noticed some other offices are using the same ID. I think NPA uses the same. You're part of finance. Okay. And now I see PCF is using the same. So these things are quite interesting. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I really want us to appreciate all the panelists and all the presenters and all the chairs over the last few days. Can we warmly receive and appreciate them? Thank you so much. Dr. Richard, and I was interesting Dr. Albert on this, that every time you bring all these experts who are coming here, especially those that are still teaching at the universities, Dr. Albert needs to be intentional and link them with some of our institutions here, because it's an opportunity. If Dr. Tim has traveled here and has spent several hours on the way, he surely can spend a few minutes with university students talking economics, and whether it's Dr. Hockman or any of the professors who are here, should find a moment to go to our institutions of higher learning and share as much knowledge as they can. And so I think working with Dr. Albert and the team, we should open some doors. The universities would be really happy. I think, is it Professor or Dr. Ahebwa, we should arrange these things where we get, Julius, you agree? Yes, because why would Dr. Tim fly here and only speak to experts and not the students who are learning and want to do the things he's doing? I think we should organize this, Dr. Albert, in a way that university students should get an opportunity to meet the highly intelligent and learned professionals who are here when they come. Because, okay, apart from when Dr. Richard sends them to the National Falls, the Murchison Falls National Park, which he should do also when they come, or to the gorillas, he should give them a moment with our students at university. And I'll push you on that, Dr. Richard. Let's find a moment for our students. All right. Gives me great pleasure to invite our Permanent Secretary and Secretary of Treasury to close this forum. May we welcome the PSST.
Thank you very much. We have overstayed here, but for a good cause. I once again want to really appreciate the IEGC for the fantastic partnership. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Richard and your team, our partners also in development of Uganda, the World Bank. You're welcome. Our colleagues in the government, the PSs present today, local government, tourism, and also the several senior government officials I can see in the room, our partners, the non-state actors, including the civil society, but not forgetting the UN family, in particular UNDP, our colleagues from academia who give us the evidence that we use to inform policy. In Uganda, we are evidence-based government. We don't just use good opinions. So we thank you for the evidence you bring on board. I therefore, I have a longer speech from my people, but I'll pick out a few points. First of all, the innovation that the team brought on board, the Mentimeter, has shown that the 8th Economic Growth Forum has been informative, educative, insightful, and so many other beautiful expressions. Our commitment is that we shall ensure that these well-researched and actionable ideas you have given us are implemented to make them impactful on the future of the country. As a country, we should rally around the 10-fold growth strategy. We should do things differently to build a $500 billion economy anchored on agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral-based manufacturing, as well as the knowledge economy. We are going to adopt new ways of doing things, invest more in new sources of growth, and leverage the emerging markets. Thank you to the IEGC Uganda for the partnership. Thank you, our team, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development for the hard work. And also thank you to the researchers and the participants for the commitment you've shown in the 2 days we've been here. I now take the honor to declare the 8th Economic Growth Forum closed and wishing you all a fantastic weekend and journey masses after lunch. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Albert, do we have any other business? All right. Since you all famished, the least I could really do is keep you here longer. So I'll try and make sure we guide you to your lunch. Please do not leave. Lunch is served. You're welcome. I suggest, I think one of the presenters said they are available for, yes, it's the PS local government who has his live list of farmers who have done what the PSST is asking for, the 10-fold growth. The farmers have done it, and if you want a live example, the PS local government is available. During lunch, you can sit with him. He will give you live examples of the people that have turned around